This is Zach. He's a 21-year-old guy. And he had a little bit of a turbulent past that led him into certain states of mind and body. And he came with his parents. Sue, where are you? Poppy, where are you? They came because nothing else was working for this guy, and he came across a few books, and it made sense to him. And I'm telling you, he had a rebirth yesterday and today. He is not the same guy that came here.
So I have a little bit of a story to tell. In high school, I had freshman year, I played soccer, and I ended up having 2 concussions, which ended up causing a little issue in my brain, I guess, and I was becoming depressed, but nothing too bad stuff. I was just not that happy, but ultimately I was getting through the day and whatnot. My second semester, senior year, on Valentine's Day, I was at school. There was a school shooting that day, and we ended up losing 17 people.
One of the major school shootings you've heard about, yes? He was there. It was at his school.
And I ended up losing some people I grew up with and friends, and it was just awful. And a year after that, I ended up losing a friend of mine who had committed suicide because she couldn't deal with the pain of losing one of her good friends. So after the shooting, I was not doing too well. Depression started to kick in, suicidal. Just every day I'd cry myself to sleep. I ate lunch alone just because I was not doing too well. And ultimately, I just needed something to help me, but every night I'd go to sleep and I would just cry myself to sleep, and I was like, there's just no hope out there. And I'd sit in the shower and just cry and ask for something to come into my life, because I knew after my friend had committed suicide, I was like, I just can't be going down the same path as her, because committing suicide, it just affects thousands of people, because people who know people, and it's just a whole tragedy. So I was at Florida State, and I was just not doing well, and I was studying athletic training at the time, and something came into my head, subconscious, and I was like, what the hell is this voice saying? Subconscious, I'm not interested in that. So I ended up typing in on YouTube, subconscious, and then I came across a man named Bob Proctor, and he's like, rewrite your paradigm, watch a video. In the suggested video, I see Bruce Lipton and Dr. Dispenza, and I'm like, who are these guys? Let me click on this video. So I ended up watching a video where Dr. Joe's just speaking, and something just resonated with me, and I was like, I don't know why, this seems like the answer. And at the same time, my mom had actually found the work too. Her friend had sent her a picture of becoming supernatural, or she had given it to her, I can't remember. And she's like, oh my God, this book is insane. I was like, send me pictures. So she sends me pictures, literally, I think 30 to 40 pictures of the preface, introduction. And I'm in my dorm bed and I'm reading it, and I'm like, oh my God, Mom, buy this book right now, because I'll be home in a few days. It was the end of the semester. She's like, I'm ordering it right now. So we were actually going to Portugal, and on the flight to Portugal, I read the entire book. During the flight, I'm like, Mom, this is unbelievable. So I ended up reading the book, fell in love with it, and the whole trip, I was like, screw this trip, I need to get home. I need to start doing the work. So I get home, I ended up having surgery, so I was able to just relax and start meditating. So I started meditating, and at first, I was not even thinking about healing the depression. I'd always been called short because I'm 5'7". So I was like, I need to manifest being 6'3". He's like, I'm putting the potential, I'm putting a T, I'm feeling the emotion. I'm like, I'm going to be so tall. And I'd get out of the meditation, I'm like, do I feel any taller? And I'm like, nope. So that's how that started. And then after 2 weeks of that, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I'm like, I'm watching videos, and I'm just like, what? I just need to become happy. I'm looking for stuff outside of me to make me happy. I'm like, it's not the way to go. So I just started doing, I was doing the tuning into new potentials, but my potentials now were happiness or just excitement rather than something physical to manifest. And then, so with the work in the beginning, it wasn't that I would come out of a meditation like, oh my God, I feel so good. But what I was noticing was, say on a scale of 0 being really depressed and 10 being perfectly happy, I would maybe start off the meditation at a 1 and I'd come out as a 2. So I went into the meditation being depressed and came out just a tiny bit less depressed. And I was like, well, at this rate, if I just put in the work, make slow progress, right? You don't have to do...
Ooh, listen to this. Listen to this truth coming out of his mouth. He's not going for the big dog. He's actually setting himself up with a plan so that he's realistic about his changes. He's learning the formula to heal instead of obsessing about healing. Go ahead, Zachy.
So I told myself, I think of it as a journey across America, right? And you're in the car. You'd never want to stop the car if you're trying to go from New York to California as quick as possible. So what I'd say is, with doing the work, like some days I would meditate for 5 hours. Other days, some days I'm like, I see absolutely no progress some days. Some days I feel like I'm going 400 steps backwards. But I would at least do a 5-minute meditation because I said I just got to keep if I'm pushing the car at 0.5 miles an hour, it's better than stopping the car and getting out.
The problem with depression is being able to think greater than how you feel. That's the challenge, right? So he was learning how to climb out of that emotional state. And because the environment is so seductive, that your reaction and your responses, consciously or unconsciously to the environment, sometimes return us back to our old feelings and thoughts. And a lot of times it is 2 steps forward, and other times it's a few steps backwards. But if you keep showing up and keep applying, then the steps going forward start to outweigh the steps going backwards, because that's your intention. How many people understand? He didn't give up and say, this is too hard. He didn't say, oh, I tried it once, how come I'm not healed?
Even though being very close to that. Sometimes I would just do a minute meditation and I was like, all right, it's better than nothing. But some days I would sit in bed, stare at the ceiling for about 45 minutes, convincing myself that I needed to get at least a minute in. If you look at my YouTube, like what I've viewed, I think I've viewed almost every single testimonial. Some days I'd need to go through 20 and then I'd be the 20th one like, all right, I'm going to do this now. Which I think the testimonials are the biggest part of this work, because I think, like he said in the beginning, the woman said she believes the work works, but not for herself. And that's kind of where I was at. And I think a lot of people are there because a lot of people have that conditioned thought where they see other people healing from miraculous things, and it's like, but I'm different, you know? Which in a sense, none of us are different. We're all the same. We're all made out of the same energy. So with the work, it was just very slow progress for a while. Sometimes I felt like I had gone a month and nothing was changing. Sometimes I would come out of a meditation and I'd have a glimpse of just what it would feel like to be at a neutral state, not even happy. So that was during the summer. I ended up going back off to college for the fall, and being up there with 3 roommates who were just partying all day. I'd be like, all right, it's 9 o'clock, I gotta go to sleep. And really I was just going to meditate, because I knew if I told them I was meditating, they would have been knocking on my door, kicking the door down, saying, come on, you gotta get out here, what the hell are you doing? So my big change really happened once it was the second year anniversary of the shooting on February 14th. And I remember writing in my journal, I was like, today's the day I'm just going to completely put myself into the work, because I see I could go into a meditation and come out just feeling a tiny bit better. Even if it was, I'd go in completely depressed and come out just a little less. I was like, I could see some progress being made. So.
But wait a second. He can tell you the day, where he was, and everything about that moment he made the choice. Everybody who has a healing that I've come across has that moment of reckoning where they said, I just finally made up my mind to go all in. I can tell you where I was, the time of day it was, who I was with, the exact date. The moment the choice was made with an amplitude of energy that was greater than the hardwired programs in the brain and the emotional conditioning in the body responds to the mind. The choice that he made became a moment in time that he would never forget. It became a long-term memory, and the stronger the emotion, the more he paid attention to the decision. And that's a big stone dropped in the quantum field in that lake, and it sends a ripple out, and he's aligning himself with a new future. He's getting a sampling, a taste of the future, and that's his body responding to his mind. How many people understand? You can do that every time you start doing the work. You can do that every time you do the walking meditation. You just get big. And this is the moment where you make another big change, and they start adding up. Go ahead.
So once I started throwing myself into the work, I never looked back, honestly. Some days I would have it where I was doing a 10-minute meditation, but that was maybe once or twice a week. I saw that my mood just started to improve completely. I was catching little glimpses of just what true happiness felt like. But don't get me wrong, there were plenty of meditations where I went in miserable, went through it miserable, was thinking the entire time, like, what the hell am I doing? And I'd come out a little less miserable and, like, just frustrated that I just wasted an hour of my life, when in reality...
There's no such thing as a bad meditation.
Yeah. So, in a sense, like, we can't see that we're changing the field, right? Because that means we're trying to see it, like we're trying to wait for it to manifest into physical reality. So you're really changing it behind the scenes, even though you might think you just wasted time. It's really true that there's never a bad meditation. And then about 2 months later, there was like a week where I was just elated for the entire day, and I was just like, something's going on here. So I remember...
Could it be all the work I've done?
So I remember waking up one morning, and I can't remember which day, but I remember sitting in bed, and I went to go reach for that familiar thought, like, oh God, like this day again, or just another day. And I remember my brain finally stopped it, pulled itself back in, and said, like, nah, today's gonna be a good day. And it was the first time I noticed... It was the first time I noticed that my brain now was starting to operate on the new software program that I had spent so much time implementing. Once I started to feel better, my meditations once in a while were starting to be like a little bit mystical. I was getting a little excited. Had a couple out-of-body experiences, was starting to see some going through like little tunnels, seeing portals. I'd run into my mom's room. I was like, Mom, you will never believe what just happened. And then part of the work that I was kind of just doing in the background with my main focus, trying to just become happier and have a love for life, was I was manifesting things that didn't seem like a big deal, which obviously is why they manifested, because I wasn't having my focus on them, waiting for them to manifest. And my life had started to change drastically. I had different music tastes. I had different cravings for food. I used to want to be a bodybuilder. I had lost 50 pounds. and I just started to love myself, which was the main thing that the work was helping me do, was self-love, which is truly the how you heal any disease in my mind, is the love. So once things started to get a little more mystical, I was just becoming so much happier. You could ask my parents. They noticed a huge change in me. I had been born with chest virus, and I didn't speak for a while. Parents thought I was going to be mute, and my whole life I'd had anxiety with speaking, which is kind of comical.
But wait, it gets better. What happened to you, Zachary, the last few days here?
So I came to the event on Sunday, and I walk in, and the whole time, so I'm really big into angel numbers, there's a huge piece of wood in our garage, and it has the number 5 on it, and I'd been seeing 555 everywhere, and to me that means a big change is coming. So I'm sitting there every day, where's this change, where's this change?
I'm so glad you believe it. That's all that matters to me. Could have been.
And then before coming to the event, I had a knowing that something was going to happen here. The first few days, I wasn't really getting much out of it, but I was like, I'm meeting so many great people. It's great to see Dr. Joe in person. I remember watching hours and hours of him on video, and I was like, I just want to make sure he's real in person, like someone that saved my life. Like, I just want to be able to look at them and make sure they're actually standing there on stage. So I come to the event and nothing's really happening, but I just keep going back to just, if nothing happens, it'll happen sooner or later. Because when you get those mystical events, that's all you want, is you're just chasing them. And in a sense, surrendering is the only way you get there, and the more you want to keep getting there is the less you're going to get there. So once it was Tuesday or Wednesday, the walking meditations totally changed a lot for me. I was able to start tapping into the centers. I was starting to feel elevated emotion a little more easy, and it was just exciting because I'd been waiting to do a walking meditation till I got to an event. So I was doing them and I was like, I feel my energy changing a little bit. So what happened yesterday is, another thing that I had wanted to ask Dr. Joe, my main question, which is a little nerdy, but he always talks about like anti-aging, anti-health, that one chemical in the body, and then he also talks about what makes eels bioluminescent and light up, and I was like, he always says that it makes eels light up, but I'm like, I want to know the chemical so bad. I'm sitting in the corner, he's talking about the pineal gland, everything is clicking in my mind, I'm like, this is the meditation that I need. While he's talking about it, all of a sudden, I start like shaking a little bit, and to go back a little bit, in September, I was sitting at the dinner table with my parents, and all of a sudden, I feel a tingling going up my spine, and my eyes pop out of my head, my flesh goes so white. My parents thought I was gonna die, my heart's racing about 400 miles an hour. I feel like I'm having an out-of-body experience with my eyes open. I'm like, Mom, I'm gonna die, this is bad.
Thank God his parents are into the work, for God's sakes. He's possessed.
But I knew my parents, if I started having convulsions going crazy, they were going to freak out. So I was suppressing that so much, trying to control it. I had to go take a walk around the neighborhood just to get the energy going. It wouldn't stop. And for weeks after that, I'd be driving, and then all of a sudden, any stimulus was so overstimulating, I'd have to like pull the car over and just do like a little breathing just to get myself back to, so I could just drive home. Like, it was crazy. The nervous system was kind of just sending out little spurts of rewiring, and I could feel it, and I was kind of getting scared.
Let's call that gamma, just so that is.
So what happened in the corner was, all of a sudden I was shaking. I would go to my dad, I'm like, this is I got a lot of energy going on. I'm about to start having something crazy. I'm going to go outside. I didn't want to interrupt Dr. Joe teaching. So I go sit outside, and it's calming down a little, but it's still going, and I'm like, something is up. So I had met a wonderful woman named Laura during the event, and I see her, she's standing alone, and I was like, Laura, I need you to talk me through this. I'm going through something, and I'd heard so many stories, but as much as Dr. Joe could say it's a lot of energy, you have to go through it to understand it's a lot of energy. So my legs are getting so hot, my arms are going numb, my jaw's numb, I'm like walking around, I can't feel anything. And so she's just talking me through it. She's like, I've had plenty of these, you're gonna be perfectly fine. And I'm like, no, I'm dying.
This happens all the time.
I'm like, you don't understand, I'm different, this is death. So she ends up putting me on the floor back there, and I'm going wild. I'm like grunting and making all sorts of noises. I can't feel my body except for just doing crazy things. And then you guys were starting the meditation, so I moved outside, and she was just helping me through it. And then I closed my eyes, and I started seeing all these fractal patterns and a butterfly, and then a triangle with an eye in it. And then a voice came to me, and it was like, you wanted something to happen? How's this? And I was like... And the synchronicity with it was that, so for the past month to 2 months, I had been hearing the name Laura everywhere. Like my dad would be selling someone's house, her name was Laura. And in her email address, it was like Laura 17, whatever. And 17 was my number, the amount of people that had died in the shooting. And I was like, so many synchronicities. So I remember sitting in bed and I was like, who the heck is Laura? Is this a girl I'm supposed to meet? Is she like, she gonna come down and...
She's an angel.
Yeah. Which she is. She helped me through what I was going through yesterday. And so I was going through that, and then I kind of came out of it, and I felt like I was reborn in a sense. And then with the pineal meditation today, I do the breath, which I think the breath is even more important than the meditations. Once you get the breath down, like, I could put myself into the cosmos in about 10 seconds, and if I could do it, you guys could definitely get it quicker than that. So I get the breath down over there, and I feel a shock in my left foot, shoot right up, back of my spine into my head, and I said, oh, Lord, this again?
That's exactly what I used to say. Oh, fuck, not now.
My heart's racing, I'm like, oh no, I'm not ready for this. And then all of a sudden it starts, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm 4 hours of this? You gotta be kidding me. Luckily, it only lasted an hour. Then he says, lay down, and I'm like, thank God, I can't take this anymore. Lay down, then all of a sudden, I was thinking about just anything and everything you could put into my head. And then in a snap of a finger, I kind of just surrendered. I don't know how I did it. I just surrendered, and then all of a sudden, I started. So in my mystical experiences, I know they're about to happen when it feels like I'm going through a time travel tube tunnel looking thing, like in a movie when you see them flying through the tube. That's exactly what it feels like. So I'm going through the tube, and I'd been chasing that for like 5-6 months. I haven't had a great, like a mystical meditation in a while. So I see it coming, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so ready for this. So I come out of the tunnel, and all of a sudden I see this white square, and then right after, in the square, I see these dots, and they look like molecules. And I had remembered growing up, I'd sit in bed and look at the ceiling, and if it was dark enough, my eyes would go into, now thinking about it, a trance, and I would start seeing dots all over the place, and I remember saying to myself, this kind of look like molecules. I'm like, I'm 8 years old, and definitely not molecules. So I see those same molecules, and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't seen these in like 10 years. All of a sudden, the molecules start to create like fractal patterns in order, and I was like, oh my God, I was seeing the atoms, the electrons, that when we put our attention on them, they in a sense can move into order if we're adding positive.
Collapse.
Yes.
Collapse.
Sorry. Thank you. So they were collapsing into these fractal patterns, and I was like, oh my God, if I just knew this when I was 8, I would not have left bed. So, and then all of a sudden, I start seeing these shapes being formed. It was kind of like sacred geometry shapes. And then in the background was this blue, white, and black, kind of looked like a thing in a kaleidoscope. And it was just, these molecules were spinning at a rate I've never seen in my life. It was so fast, it was so fascinating, and it comes in front of my face like it's a flat screen TV in front of my face, and it starts saying what the message is when they come through me. It sounds like my thoughts, but I know it's not my thoughts because I'm no one, nowhere, no time. So in a sense, like I know it's not my voice talking to me. I can't really describe it.
It's the divine, let's just say what it is.
So it starts saying to me, when you put your attention on something, you're changing the field, and you're going to change matter if you keep that energy into one pointed attention. And it just made so much sense to me. So the last thing that happened was, so I was talking about my thing with the whole speech, and all of a sudden at the end of the meditation, I feel my throat like opening up, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? And it just keeps like opening up, and I'm like doing these neck jerks. I'm like, can this stop? Meditation's almost over. Not this again. And then the meditation ended, and it kind of just, like, my neck just surrendered in and just relaxed and just felt so open. And it was the first time in my life where I thought, like, I can't wait to go talk to people. Like, I just want to talk to everyone.
Where would he be right now if he didn't keep choosing himself every morning? Tell me. He would not be on the stage. He would not have had this experience. So he remembers those moments where he wanted to quit, and he went a little further. He remembers those moments because that was led him to this moment right here. And every time you choose yourself in a meditation, and I have sat with myself for hours just thinking, what is this? But it is years of programming coming unglued, and you got to be able to ride that wild steed. You got to be able to saddle up and stay on. And if you get bucked, you got to get back on again until you finally figure it out. And he showed up every day. To the profane, for someone who's needs to see evidence for themselves, they need to be healed right away. To them, they would say, yeah, he just is lucky. He's a weird kid anyway. You know, they would say something like that. But the truth is, by him choosing himself every single day, it meant he believed on some level that he could heal, that he could change. Yes or no? And because he showed up every day, even if it was for 5 minutes, just to keep his foot in the sand, to stay in the game, he did it. And he remembers every one of those choices. He didn't talk about all the great meditations, although he had some. He's talking more about the challenging ones because it was the challenging ones that led him to where he is today. He loved himself more because he did settle the body down. He did get beyond that chatter, that voice, that program, that hardwired attitude, that emotional conditioning. He was curious to see what was on the other side of it. To the person who has an entitlement and a sense of urgency that it hasn't happened to them yet, they are fooled because it was every day that he showed up that led him to that moment today in his pineal gland meditation. He was just worthy to receive. And you see, he was just curious. And by the way, when it happens, it's big. I keep telling you that. So big, you're like, I think I'm good. You've been waiting all this time for it, and when it comes, it's such a dichotomy because you can't control it. It's just way bigger than that. And when that autonomic nervous system latches on, and it's in coherence, and it's going to pick up a frequency, you got to deal with it. And you got to buckle up. And it's not something you can do in one leap. Trust me. You let a little in, and then that's enough. And then relax, you let a little bit more in, then you don't want any more in, and you got to be with that for a minute, and you got to get ready for it again. You got to do it on your own terms, and you got to practice surrendering and not contracting, but it's so big that it's normal. The response is to contract. Now, would you say that something wonderful is happening to Zachary? Would you say?
The main reason I wanted to do the testimonial was because when I got into the work, I was watching a lot of testimonials, and it was always that I came to one of the events and I healed myself, or right after I went to an event, I healed myself, and I was like, I want to be the person. And I saw a couple videos where it was like I healed myself at home, but the majority of them are that I went to an event, and I was saying to myself, why can't I be one of the few ones that I healed myself at home, and then came to the event after and able to share my experience. And that's exactly why I'm here, to help give inspiration to people with depression and suicide, but also the younger generation, because this work truly changed me, and I know a lot of people that it could help. And if we get younger people doing the work, then we'll change the future.